are encouraged.
Can we get a cup of coffee in here, please?
Damn good coffee and hot.
Why am I hearing an echo? I am hearing an echo, echo, echo coming through. That's not cool at all. Are you hearing that, folks? Wow, that's really crazy. Oh, I know. I'm not sure what's going on here. I'm a little perturbed about this. I'm out of time. Wow, very crazy. How are we hearing this? Anyway, a good morning. It is Cinco de Mayo, and we are expecting. Oh, I can't deal with this. I gotta deal with some stuff here. Give me 1 minute here. How do I turn this echo off? Oh, Carl's saying it's fine there. Well, that's weird. It's weird in my headphones. Hello? Maybe is that a little better? Anyway, the fabulous Robert Klein will be joining me today sometime around 9:30. I can't even hear that. This is very disconcerting to me. I don't know why I'm hearing double feeds here. Very crazy. And you're not hearing it there. Well, anyway, it is Cinco de Mayo, the 5th of May, made up holiday. I don't like the way that even looks. Maybe if I just do this. Okay, that's a little better. Anyway, um, where that's coming from now? I should be getting nothing. Hello in the control room back there. You're fired. Did not sleep well last night. You know what? Maybe it's that. Could be. Could be. How about that? That's better for me, right? Yes, it is. So far, we're doing better. Let me try one more thing. Oh no, we'll do that. Okay, that's better for me. Jesus, quick o'clock at the boinky. Anyway, oh man, we're off to a great start. I'm glad it's not happening when Robert's here because that would be messed up. I did try streaming to Instagram Live this morning. First time I ever tried that. I'm not sure it even worked. Just as kind of a prep for this kind of thing. Did not sleep well last night. Not just because I'm excited about this program. Overdid it with the edibles again. There you go. And you know what? Some crazy shit happens with that. It's not just a body high or mental high. It's kind of a psychedelic high. And I see that now, this is really crazy. Um, Getting ads on social media for mushroom gummies, psychedelic mushroom gummies in state. And, I'm in New York State. It's the same company that ships from, I believe, Oklahoma to New York State. You're not supposed to be able to ship via the mail anything that is not legally federally. Man, I need some sleep. So if it's not legal on the federal level, I don't know how they can ship it here because psychedelics are not legal here. So, but I'm interested in that. It's the same company, and you know what? They deliver on time every time, and it's just very weird, surprising to see that it comes through. But so there's that. Anyway, I'm really excited to talk to Robert Klein today. This, apropos uh, Cinco de Mayo, as I mentioned yesterday, is one of my favorite made-up holidays, and has been for many years. From playing with the band, it was always a great night. It was this real start of summer here on Long Island. Now it's not quite summer here, but finally, not cold and rainy. But it was, it's a time where the party season really kicks off here. I know it's a made up holiday, and uh, I don't even think Mexico celebrates it at all. But we have been celebrating for years. And 20 years ago today, as I said yesterday, well, it goes back to 20 years ago yesterday. We were playing at a place called Water Lilies on the Nautical Mile in Freeport, Long Island. And there was a guy in a buckskin. Um, uh, I can't take the phone right now, Ralphie. I can't take a phone call right now. I can't take a phone call right now. I can't even hear you. Hold on. Ralphie's on the line. Are you there? Are you there? Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't take phone call. I can't put phone calls really on the air.
How come we can't type nothing?
I can't type nothing.
No, I can't comment.
I don't know. You're not logged in, maybe. Got to be
All
logged
right,
in.
let me keep trying. I'm just
Okay. I'm on the air here. All right. I'm hanging up on you.
oh, I'm watching you. Don't eat no edibles.
Okay. Yeah. No. I did last night. 1,100 milligrams, I think, and it was a little bit overdone. Anyway, I'm hanging up on you. All right. See you later. Turn that thing off. Where was I? Off. Anyway, Cinco de Mayo. So yeah, so on May 4th, we were playing at Waterloo. There's a guy in a buckskin jacket being an annoying prick to the band and to me especially. And then we were playing at the River House, which is like 3 doors down on the Nautical Mile on Cinco de Mayo 20 years ago tonight. And we're kind of wrapping it up and walked out of the River House to see the bouncer beating the shit out of the guy in the in the buckskin coat. And Johnny D was sitting there with me smoking a cigarette. And he goes, "Well, Hank, you said Cinco de Mayo was your favorite holiday. This is a present for you." And it was. I mean, guy was an annoying prick, and watching him getting beat up was kind of fun. It was a good time. That was 20 years ago tonight. So um, it's a fond memory for me, not for him. Anyway, we're off to a flying start here today. Got a letter last night, an email that has me very confused. And it's weird because it came from a university, the domain, a university in Arizona, EDU. I'm assuming it's a university. It could be a public school or something like it. It's .edu from an Arizona school, and it's a dear mind dog, which I like. Don't get me wrong. I like when somebody addresses me as dear mind dog. But people usually call me Matt. Some people call me dog. Ralphie calls me dog. People call me dog or Matt. Nobody addresses me as mind dog. Well, very rarely do I get addressed as mind dog. So I appreciate that greeting. Dear mind dog, when can I come see you in West Virginia? Now I'm not in West Virginia. I almost don't want to say where I am, even though everybody knows where I am. But this person is in Arizona asking me when they can come see me in West Virginia. And they signed Chai or CHI. That's it. I don't know if it's a guy or a girl. I'm tempted to say Kai, Chai. Um, if you do come see me, please make sure it is in West Virginia because I don't plan on ever going to West Virginia. But just the nature of the email is kind of disturbing. And I think that I have enough problems with thinking I have stalkers out there and crazy people. I get a lot of hate mail. So don't come and see me. Don't come. There's no reason to come and see me, unless I don't know if you want to come to one of my gigs or something. But um, that's a matter of public record. The Rockin' 45s. You don't really want to come see me though. There's no reason to, and especially you don't want to come from Arizona. If you do come from Arizona, make sure you go to West Virginia, and everything will be cool. Now, this being Cinco de Mayo and my favorite made-up holiday, kind of apropos that it, this could be my last gig. Now, because the meatball guy has threatened to come and murder me on Sunday, May 7th. Now, here's where I'm confused. And I'm not the only one who's confused here. I thought, and this thing is being promoted as Mother's Day. Thought that's why I got the gig because I'm subbing for Dave Solomon. I thought this Sunday was Mother's Day here in the U.S. But today I looked at my calendar. Murdered by a meatball maker. Yeah. Today I looked at my calendar, and it turns out, well, at least according to the Apple calendar, Mother's Day is May 14th, a week from this Sunday. Now, Mikey called me yesterday and said he would come down to the gig if he could, but he's going out east for Mother's Day. He's going out to the winery. He's taking, I guess, his mother-in-law because his mother has passed, and I don't know. Well, I don't know. He's not married to the mother of his children, so I don't know why he would be taking what the purpose of him celebrating Mother's Day is. But if any, put it in the chat room, people in America, is Sunday Mother's Day or not? Or I have been completely wrong, and not just me, Mikey and a couple other of my friends, and I think Dave is wrong because I think he was taking off the gig for Mother's Day, which is why I got the gig. So I'm very, very confused by all of that. Also, I did see an ad. Rick Eberly, who has run some music stuff here on Long Island uh, for a long time. He's not a young man anymore. I remember when he was a very young promoter in his 20s. Uh, oh, I get it now. Okay, where the echo was coming from. That's all fine and good. Fine and dandy. There we go. Figured it out. I had a tab open in another browser. Anyway, Rick Eberly put out an ad for, and one of the musician groups on here, for entertainers wanted for Mother's Day this Sunday. It says in the ad, looking for your solos, duos, and full bands for Mother's Day this Sunday to play the Long Island Marathon, which is kind of very strange for me because I'll be honest with you. Um, I'm outing myself as a complete novice or, naivety about marathons. How far is the distance of the complete field passing you? Because what's going to happen is whatever it is, 13 miles twice, they run in a loop. I don't know. But um, they have different sections where they set up entertainment where people, I guess, are running by. To me, it's counterproductive because that would slow the race down. Is that the intent, to slow the race down? Oh, they're going to stop and watch the music as they run by. Um, that doesn't seem productive. So I don't know, but he's looking for. But in the ad, it said Mother's Day. Um, so I don't know. If Sunday really is Mother's Day. But this whole idea of setting entertainment up along a marathon path, how long does it take for the entire field to run past any small section? Um, I don't know. It's very strange to me. I mean, it would seem to me less than a minute before the entire field passed you, and so does that your entire gig is over in a minute? Very confused. I'm totally confused this morning, and it doesn't help that I didn't get a whole lot of sleep. Um, we got some comments in here. Ralphie just texted me. He's not seeing a comment box. Anybody can help Ralphie figure this out. I don't know if he's on YouTube, Facebook, or what. Maybe he's watching a YouTube video on Facebook and not seeing a comment field there. Listen, when um when Robert gets here, I'm probably not going to be looking very much at the comment box anyway. I'm going to try to be completely focused on him so that I don't say anything really stupid or get distracted from the conversation. Because often, and he's a talker. Let me just put that. I'm expecting it to go a little bit. So I could be here a while, and I'm fine with that. I can develop my listening skills here today. But so I'm going to try my best to, if I see something that is really, really important and worth adding to um, the stream or the conversation, I will do it then. Anyway, I think it's time to go to our sponsors piece. We are brought to you by Koa Coffee, the amazing Koa Coffee. It's the best coffee in the world. I got some right now. You should get some too. Check it out, Koa Coffee. This episode is brought to you by Koa Coffee. If you are a coffee connoisseur and want to experience the best coffee Hawaii has to offer, no blends, no compromise, try the true taste of aloha. Koa Coffee produces premium Hawaiian coffee, hand-picked, expertly roasted, and delivered from Hawaii to your door with aloha. From award-winning 100% Kona coffee grown on the slopes of the Mauna Loa volcano to the unique mocha beans of Maui, they strive to provide their loyal customers with the best quality and freshness. Since 1997, Koa Coffee has been known far and wide as a product of utmost quality, and their awards prove it. Koa Coffee was featured in Forbes' Top 10 Coffees of the World. This is the coffee Forbes called the best coffee in America. Find out what it's all about. Go to minddogtv.com/coffee.
You're listening to Coffee with a Dog on Live 365 Mind Dog Radio.
Oh, hello, young lady. I just want to say I got a letter asking if that young lady is the same young lady that was pictured with me at the gig last week. Very similar looking young lady, but not quite her. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time. Uh, I've I've been waiting for this moment for 40 years. You folks know that. You've heard me talk about my guests today. They say never meet your heroes, but I've never been one to really follow instructions all that well or listen to good advice. And I have met many of my heroes through this platform, and I'm blessed to be able to have conversations, in-depth conversations with people who inspired me. None more, and this is not to disparage any of the great celebrity guests and other people who I've met through this platform. None more inspirational in my life than the man we're about to talk to. You've heard me say he belongs on my personal Mount Rushmore of comedy, but much more than that, he's influenced my songwriting. He's influenced me in music and film production and so many things. He's one of my heroes. Ladies and gentlemen, please open your ears, open your minds, and help me welcome in Robert Klein. Yes, Robert Klein to the Coffee with the Dog, brother.
What a guy.
Welcome.
You won't be disappointed. I'm an incredible person.
I know
I've
that.
saved 2 people from drowning in my life. That's all I have
Really?
to say.
Well, be careful. I don't know if that's true, but if it is, congratulations. But once on the radio, I said I was struck by lightning 7 times, and somebody called into the host of the station and said, "Is that true? That guy was struck by lightning 7 times."
Is it true?
No, of course not.
I don't know. Lightning strikes are incredibly frequent, especially if you live in some place like Kansas.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I don't, and you know. You
No,
have an interesting look about you. There's a little Himmler in it, I have to say, but by and
the
large, it's intimidating.
Groucho Marx meets Jesse Ventura, or
Not bad.
G. Gordon Liddy. You would remember that
I,
reference. Uh,
very well, very
yeah,
well.
yeah.
The great hero. Um, Groucho, I still put on my collection of the Marx Brothers, W.C. Fields, Laurel and Hardy, even the Stooges. I have a complete set of the Stooges. The comedy is moronic in a way, but to dignify it as someone who went to the Yale Drama School, it's a Plautus. It's like Plautus, the Roman playwright whose stuff was slapstick and all that, and they can be very funny.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't seen any Stooges since I was a kid. They used to play them in when I was in school. They used to have assembly and play Three Stooges films for kids.
Well,
And
it's fun. Someone, producer in Florida, gave me the entire set. And you see the production values at Columbia Pictures when Harry Cohn signed them at 1,000 a week each. 20 years later, they were still making 1,000 a week. Uh, they could use any of the sets for the major motion pictures if they weren't being used at that moment. So you see in the early ones, it's gorgeous thing. After that, there's a corridor with with doors. I once hosted an evening at the New York Comedy Festival Town Hall, which had descendants of the Three Stooges, Moe's two children, grown Beverly Hills grandparents,
wow.
beautifully dressed, well educated at the UCLA or USC, and Larry Fine's kid, quote unquote, sister, like a 75-year-old woman, who unfortunately for her looked exactly like Larry from the Three Stooges.
Oh my God.
Genetic lock certainty. But they were talking. Mo was very much a family man, Mo Howard. How much Daddy ran home from the studio and played with them and all that, and they're so mature and lovely, and that's what their father did for a living. And I'll tell you, it was all I could do to keep from taking my pinkies and going and smacking each and every one of them.
No.
Jerome Curley was a rounder, what Rodney used to call a rounder. Clubs every night. He pulled the tablecloth out, paid for the broken dishes, and of course had early strokes. And Shemp, a very versatile actor, someone I spoke to in Canada, interviewed with him, is doing a documentary about Shemp Howard. So I started, Mr. Intellectual Comedian, started with a discussion of the Three Stooges.
Were they from New York, or were they
Oh,
originally
yes.
from? Yeah, they were New
Well,
York.
did they move at some point in their childhood temporarily somewhere? I've forgotten. But there's total New York accents. Their parents were immigrants. There is a picture of them with their father, and he looks exactly like Shemp, except exponentially more ugly. I mean, this guy was something else.
I hope he's not
And
listening.
he saw their children succeed. Now, Groucho and the Marx Brothers' parents, Frenchie and what was her name? The mother. They were German immigrants, German Jewish immigrants who came here, long before World War II or something like that. They would have been fried had they stayed
Right.
in Europe. That those kind of immigrant rhythms. Now, Groucho was an autodidact. That is, he had a sixth grade education and resented his mother very much taking him out of school to be in show business. Minnie, because there was a musical called Minnie's Boys about Minnie and Frenchie. Frenchie was the father. And he taught himself. He read all of Dickens. He read a lot of philosophy. And that's a good word you can use at a cocktail party. Autodidact.
Yeah, I was gonna say, where's my thesaurus or
The rest were morons. The fact that they make a big deal that Harpo, who was apparently the greatest man, that he just never had an enemy, but they make him out to be some intellectual at the famous round table at the Algonquin Hotel because they adored him, the intellectuals. But he himself, I read his book, which he didn't write. I'll tell you quickly, and then I have you take over your own show. There was an article about me in the Sunday Times, a big spread number of years ago. Made a point. I'm playing all these theaters, in the 70s, and it was like a new vaudeville. Hey, people are playing theaters again. All these converted into movie theaters, and now live entertainment again, even though they were originally vaudeville. I get a letter. Then I hosted The Tonight Show for the first time. I guess I hosted it about 15 times. And I was on the show a total of, with Johnny, 97 times.
Wow.
When I was on with Jimmy a couple of years ago, before the plague, they gave me a plaque with every performance on The Tonight Show with the date. I think it was 97. In any case, I get a letter from Groucho Marx. I saw you hosting a Tonight Show. You were fantastic. That girl was talking about cockroaches, and Bernadette Peters. She was adorable, but he didn't like her talking about cockroaches. And you saved her, and blah, blah, blah. I laughed so hard, I almost fell off my secretary's knee, he said. He said, when you come out to California, give me a call, and I'll buy you dinner. If I really like you, I'll buy you breakfast, too.
Wow.
So I go out to California to do a part in Love American Style. Are you too young for that?
No, I remember it quite well, actually.
Yeah. And we're shooting at Paramount, and I call Groucho, but we're going to be shooting at night. So I go, Groucho, it's Robert Klein. You remember? I remember. Every time I would tell old people like George Burns my name, which is polite, and I forget names and nouns. You may have to help me. It's part of being old. They said, I know. So I said, well, you invited me for dinner. He said, well, can you come for dinner? I said, I can't come for dinner because we're shooting at night. Oh, and he said, well, can you come for dinner? I said, well, Groucho, we're shooting at night. He said, well, can you come for dinner? So I don't know if it's mini strokes or he's putting me on. So I said, well, you said if you really like me, you give me breakfast. He said, well, come for breakfast. So I went to his house in Beverly Hills. Beautiful house, a little bit run down. There's a gorgeous nurse attending him without a nurse's thing on, just a beautiful young woman. He had a hospital bed. He had a little stroke or something, but he got out of it. He was running around in these black pajamas, chasing a cat. It was funny. So I asked him, among other things, what's the definitive book about the Marx Brothers? Because I'm such a fan. I said, is it Harpo Speaks? He says, Harpo didn't write that,
Wow.
Right away he gave it, because he wrote his own books,
Ah.
which I value too. Harpo Speaks had no with so-and-so, it was just that. Then he pointed to his honorary Oscar and the picture of Erin Fleming, who was his companion. She was about 35 years old. She gave him new life, He says, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't fuck, he said. And he said, if I had to give up one of these two, and he points to his Oscar and a picture of Erin, he said, I give up the Oscar. And she came about 2 hours after I'm sitting there. She surprised him. She was in New York. Later on, I offered to give a deposition, which they didn't need because they sued her that she was stealing his money after he died. And she wasn't.
Remember that. I remember.
She gave him an extra few years. And, that's pretty much wonderful conversation. That's my Groucho story. You take over your own show.
That's beautiful.
This is my 5-calorie. I don't drink anymore for over a year. This is my 5-calorie cranberry. Yeah, cranberry juice by itself is poisonous.
Really? I'm a big fan of cranberry
I like
juice.
cran with other things.
Yeah.
Listen,
Everybody thinks I got UTIs.
This interview is over.
Wow, that had to be a magic moment meeting Groucho. I was exposed to Groucho really young age. I remember watching them with my grandparents. I was 4 years old and watching Marx Brothers movies, and my grandfather like laughing at my reactions to some of the jokes. That like, how, you understand these puns because they were so, early 20th century, early 1900s. Puns that a 4-year-old shouldn't be getting, but I was always a big fan of comedy, which leads me to you.
Well, he had great writers, and the writers like S.J. Perelman were educated, even slightly intellectual. That's why that wonderful movie about war,
Duck Soup.
Duck Soup. I know it like the back of my hand, and I couldn't think of it. Is really, as much as they deny it, this was between wars. It's very reminiscent of the stupidity that started this colossal World War I. Go ahead.
Right. With because being exposed to comedy young, I talk about your position in my view in comedy as one of the people who belong on my personal Mount Rushmore. But more than that, you are to me a inspirational singer and songwriter. And people say, I was talking to my brother yesterday. He's like, "What songs did he sing?" And I was going through. I said, I only remember one song that he sang as a serious song and that was Lenny Welch, "Since I Fell for You," which like really blew me away. Your rendition of that, but "The Bronx Is Beautiful" is one of my favorite songs, and it changed the way I write songs, much to my publisher's chagrin. He did not. What are you writing for adults for? You should be writing for kids. Adults don't buy records, that kind of thing. But the question I have for you is, wait, what came first, the music or the comedy? Were you a singer from a very young age? Because if you weren't a comedian, you could have been a rock and roll star or rock and roll singer, or whatever adult.
Well, that's what Neil Bogart thought, who started Casablanca Records. And the late Neil Bogart was one of the greatest record executives. In fact, there was a movie about him not too long ago. I think it went into the tubes, but he thought that idea didn't appeal to me. I like using music in comedy, but the music being good. I have to add that most of my songs, except really early on, were written with Bob Stein, who I've been working with for 38 years. I've had in over 50 years 4 accompanists, but nobody compares with his length. Plus, he produced 4 of the HBO specials, the most recent 4. And we were nominated together for songwriting for 2 Emmys for the Colonoscopy song. And that was 2001. And more recently, the Hymn to America in the last HBO special, a song about Obama, keep your pecker in your pants. It was a very good song. So in comedy, my opinion is the music. That was the problem with Mark Russell, in my opinion. The melody, the piano playing, the technical stuff should have been a little better. Anyway, that's stupid. But thank you. My parents said that I could carry a tune at 6, 7 months.
Wow.
And I just became a grandfather for the first time. And this baby girl is a light, music. My ex-wife, my only wife, who I've been divorced from for 35 years, and I was married to for 16, was a Metropolitan Opera singer. She sang all over the world. And between the two of us, my son is very musical, and it's passed on. We always sang in my house. My mother played beautiful piano, and my sister could sing, and we all gathered around the piano in innocent days. Kept us out of trouble with the police. We would sing. And so music has always been a part of my life. However, when I had the radio show, Robert Klein radio show, produced by DIR, do you remember the Flower Power Biscuit Hour?
Yeah, yes, I do.
Well, those same guys. And so when I was on Broadway and they're playing our song, and I was buying an apartment on Fifth Avenue for cash, these old buildings, the first line buildings do not allow mortgages. And they sniffed me out pretty good to make sure I'm a solid citizen. It was an income subsidy, a very nice one. And I did this radio show with the biggest names in music, Ringo and the Police and all that. So the producer had to hit me in. I had to take home the albums and learn who they were because I was, I love to this day James Taylor. I love the Beatles. I love certain Eric Clapton tunes, this and that, but I don't know pop culture. And I was more into Handel and Bach. I still am, although I love the blues. I play the blues and all that. So I really, when people talk about the boss, I hardly know what he does. This guy, I've heard a few songs.
Yeah.
I really, I don't know. It doesn't interest me, but I like Steely Dan a lot.
When you said the classical stuff, it kind of surprised me because I was under the impression that you grew up loving doo-wop because the child of the '50s stuff and doo-wop and acapella, and then rock and roll when it became like a company doo-wop, that kind of stuff. I thought that was your root.
Absolutely, no question about it. I was early fan of the Moondog Show, Alan Freed, WINS. So I'm talking about 1955. I was 13. I think it was then. Supposedly, he coined the expression rock and roll.
Right.
Because Moondog Show, they played Mickey and Sylvia, Love is Strange, Sunday Kind of Love, the Harp Tones, that kind of stuff. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And also the Pear Shaped. There were a couple of black DJs in Jersey playing this stuff. Jocko Henderson. And one night, Alan Freed said, "Boys and girls, you got to change the name of the show. It's going to be the Rock and Roll Party." I remember it very well. And what happened is Moondog was this eccentric, blind Viking poet who stood in front of the CBS building on 6th Avenue with his staff and some pretty groupies, very esoteric groupies. It's hard to find blind Viking poet groupies. And he had them. And his name was Moondog. And he promised to sue the ass off of Alan Freed, who died young in disgrace. He was a payola guy. So he changed the name to rock and roll. I love that stuff then. I like it nostalgically now. I revisit it all the time in my collection, once in a while. Some of it stands out. It was all very badly recorded. The stuff wasn't great. The poor musicians were stolen from, guys like George Goldner, his record company, Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. They went nowhere financially. But that to me we called it rock and roll. We never called it doo-wop. I was in a group called the Teen Tones. We were on the Ted Mack Amateur Hour. It's in the Library of Congress. It was on one of my HBO specials, that little clip. And we thought, gee, we're going to be stars and this and that. You know who gave me a birthday greeting? My friend in Florida put him on. Little Anthony.
Wow. He's
He's
still
93
alive?
years old.
Wow.
83.
Great.
He sounds great.
Wow.
And Allison, the producer, told me he sings beautifully. I was on the Malt Shop Memory Cruise with him 9 years ago, but I didn't catch the show. I just did that again and got COVID. I was the only comedian. It was, the one righteous brother who was a hell of a nice guy, Bill, and his son or someone singing, a lot of chubby Checker who's not so chubby. But the Beatles, wow, Beatles, yeah, and a lot of romance to the Beatles, and they did have a spell. I thought they were magnificent. I liked it very much, but I don't know if I heard the famous song of Led Zeppelin, I'd say I know that song, but I don't know these people.
Right, I know.
I met Livingston Taylor, who I worked with a few times, James Taylor's brother. He was going to be appearing the next night with Leo Kotke, who I am working with in Palm Springs next. He's going to be the opening act. And it was Livingston. I said, you know what? This may sound chintzy, but your brother James is the only person of my contemporary in show business. We know so many of the same people, the Saturday Night Live people. I never met the guy, and I just want to tell him how great he is. And I haven't yet.
Wow.
Love his stuff. I think from first to last, he was great. I loved Laura Nero. I loved Judy Collins. In those days, I bought the LPs. But then I kind of drifted away. The Bach and Handel and Mozart have always been like steady with me. Even Gregorian chants. I love ancient music.
That
Um,
was clear and in Child of the 50s, Man of the 80s. Okay, she said, people haven't seen that. Go back and revisit it.
Most
But
people have
you
seen it.
said,
My first,
I want to do an oldie, and then he started doing the
yeah, an
Gregorian
oldie.
chant.
This goes way back, right? I played Sacred Heart College a month and a half ago in Connecticut. I had to have temporarily anyway, my foreskin replaced. And I didn't mind. They were a great audience, and I didn't mind. I performed for anywhere, a church, a chapel.
That's funny.
How about one? They say age is just a number.
Right.
That's true. 911. The best part of waking up is that I'm waking up.
All right, just a little bit more on the music, and then we'll get to comedy.
Go ahead.
But
Go ahead. A little COPD. Don't worry. Go
right.
ahead.
Yeah, that's fine. I can always call 911 here from, but I don't know where to tell them to go. But classical stuff again has got me confused because you're a harp player, blues harp player, and most people don't know the difference between harmonica and blues, across harp and what you play. It's not a simple instrument. It was one of the first instruments that I
It's down the hall. Can I go get my harmonica?
Sure, certainly. I'll just
don't go anywhere. Hold on.
wait. Where's mine? I'll play it for you. When I had one here.
Don't go anywhere.
Well, while he's walking, just notice that his leg is not stopping. But where I was going with this, I'm surprised he didn't have it with him. You know what? Because when
I'm here.
I hear. When I'm surprised because when you were on John Pavaramo's show, I was in the audience in the chat room, and I said, "Ask him about I Can't Stop My Leg," and you immediately picked up the harmonicas. Like he's always got it with him.
You guys all together who have podcasts?
No, I know John. As a comedian first, but
see, this is the difference. This is classical.
I'm surprised that works on a diatonic harmonica.
This is a German ambulance. And this is the blues.
Okay, now that's not. Yeah, that was never easy, even when you were young. I mean, you make it look easy, but I know playing cross harp like that, it's not an easy thing to do. People think
it's limited. Yeah, you can't, and it's also requires less skill than say what Stevie Wonder does. Or actually, I had a correspondence with the great classical harmonica player Larry Adler.
Oh,
who was left the country during the anti-communist hysteria because they blacklisted him. So he went to London. He's on a lot of film scores. Also, Toots Thielman, the late, who also played beautiful guitar. And I do have chronic bronchitis from having been a cigarette smoker many years ago. But Toots Thielman only had one functioning lung. He had a collapsed lung from inhaling something when he was a kid, some solid thing. And he's a beautiful harmonica player. And I've been contacted by someone who's doing a documentary on the harmonica. They were going to do John Sebastian Across the River and then me in one day. And then the crew got COVID, so I'm waiting on them. I learned a lot from Sonny Terry. You know, Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee. I worked with him at the bitter end years ago. For those of your listeners that don't know, Sonny was a big, broad black man who was blind. And he had huge lips too, which one would think would make it more difficult. He was fantastic. And he is on the original cast album of Finian's Rainbow. He was used in a lot of movies for that, you know, bluesy sound. And Brownie McGee played an acoustic guitar, not terribly well. And he had a high shoe. He was lame. One leg was shorter. And apparently they didn't like each other. Even they worked together for years. So we're in the dressing room between shows. And they call each other River. So, what you want, River? I mean, Sonny was much mellower and nicer than Brownie. What you want, River? Should we do this number? I don't care, River. You do whatever you want. Would do to say. And, hey, River. I said, Brownie, why do you call each other River? He said, because it goes on and on. So years later, this Jewish manager of theirs, I forgot his name, some old guy, managed him for years. He said they didn't like each other very much. And Sonny lived in Queens and Brownie lived in Oakland, California. So it was a logistical problem. Anyway, I learned some stuff from him. My friends and I used to kid around, and it's very simple. If you blow out, it's polka. You know, or but if you suck in, and somebody discovered this sometime in the 30s, probably on some cotton farm in Minnesota, in Mississippi, you know, you go, instead of, if you go, like a train
coming.
You know, so sucking in. But if you do only sucking in, you need to go out too. So I used it in comedy. And one time at the Improv, when I came back from Second City in Chicago, which is the greatest thing that ever happened to me, I was there 65 and part of 66. We came to New York. Fred Willard, my dear late friend, died just last year. David Steinberg, I'm not sure he's doing too good. And right after that, I guess David told me about this club on 44th Street, and I got a part in the first Broadway show I auditioned for, Apple Tree, Mike Nichols directing. So that was the Schubert Theater on 44th, and the Improv was at 44th and 9th, like a block and a half down west. So I'd have a couple of tokes with Jay Norman, who was a very hip dancer, an original stage and movie of played Chino in West Side Story, and a ballet dancer, but you wouldn't want to screw with him, baby. He was a fantastic martial arts. Anyway, we get a little high. No one knew it then. And I go down, and the first night I went down, Alan Alda and Barbara Harris and Larry Blyden were the stars of the show. And it was a small cast. They all came to give me support. And I killed them because I had matured at Second City, and I had not really tried stand-up except at Hootenanny nights in the Village, a couple of nights when I was substitute teaching. And I killed them. And I felt more confidence, so I started to go every night. This guy comes over to me, tugging at his tie. I'll tell you, you were fucking brilliant, okay? You can curse, right, on this show?
No.
Oh. You were fucking brilliant. This is exactly what he said. I never saw this man in my life, okay? A black suit, a tie, probably red, tugging at his... I'll tell you, man, you were fucking brilliant, okay? And I'm a tough cocksucker. So later on, years later, I'm making a movie in Miami. I get a notice, can they fly me surreptitiously this coming weekend? We're not shooting. They want to fly me. David Frost is going to do a special, This Is Your Life, Rodney Dangerfield.
Wow.
So they fly me out there, and it's son and daughter, and Thelma, their housekeeper, and their mother was gone, his first wife. And he said, Rodney, David Frost, Rodney, do you recognize this voice? And I said, you were brilliant, and I'm a tough customer. Yeah. Anyway, he said the important thing. Now you got to come here every night for 2 or 3 years to get it right.
Wow.
And so I began going to the Improv. Maybe my third time there, I see this woman who turns out to be Joan Rivers and her husband, Edgar, and they've got a tape recorder. I said, shit, we used to do that at Second City. That's exactly what I should do. So I lugged this 25, 30 pound Wallensack tape recorder.
Reel to
down
reel
40
or?
Oh, no, reel to reel. This was before cassette. Years later, I did this gig for Dick Clark, big payday, just hanging around, meeting people. It was the 10th anniversary of the Sony Walkman. And Mr. Morita was there, who invented Sony, this Japanese dude. And I tried to tell him how not only do people listen to music, but comedians, and I can measure my career by the diminution in the size of these recording devices.
Yeah, right.
From the Wallensack to a portable reel-to-reel to a cassette to a mini to a,
Right.
So that became my Yale Drama School for stand-up. And following Rodney around, who was just becoming Rodney from Jack Roy. Some of us old-timers still called him Jack. I had my own name for him, Danger. I called him Danger, but I'm still very close with his daughter, and that's a whole story. He at first was a courageous parent because his first wife couldn't take care of the kids. She was a couple of drinks and she was out of it. She was in mental hospitals. He came home and this 5-year-old and 2-year-old were unsupervised running around. He said, I can't go on the road. I'm going to open a club. And every delicatessen waiter said, what, are you crazy? Opening a club now in 1968? Now, television killed clubs. And then, ironically, television was instrumental in making a whole new kind of club, comedy clubs, which no one ever heard of. There was no such thing as a comedy club. Anyway, he borrowed $120,000 and opened a club. The mob didn't get anywhere near him. I remember taking a leak next to a William Morris agent at his club. He said, it's all mob. I said, no, man, not a penny. Because they loved him, these gangsters. But he kept them out. I don't need anything. Thanks. I lent them $5,000. I had $11,000 in the bank in 1968.
Wow.
And I got it back. I didn't ask him for interest or anything. And it became a powerhouse. So it was very noble of him. But later on, when he really became kind of a superstar, I think he neglected his children. And, Melanie is a wonderful, wonderful person, wonderful woman. And Brian is kind of
I forgot that you were close with Rodney till Jackie. I talked to Jackie Martining last night, and he said, tell Robert Klein I said hello. I said, oh, you know him? He said, he was close with Rodney for that brief period where Rodney actually liked me. But he just
well, I was his first protege. He then he was a depressed person. The only thing that made him happy was being in front of audiences. There's a very depressing article near his end in Rolling Stone. I have the picture up. Going around in a limo. He had a pot license so he could smoke. Oh, it's my son. Hold on. Hi, Al. I'm on an iPod. What do we call it? A podcast.
Podcast or streaming radio.
That's quite all right. What's up? That's best. I'll see you tomorrow. All right, I'll see you in the morning. Okay. He'll see me in the morning. How do you like that kid?
You gotta love him.
He's 622 months old. He's so adorable. He's 39.
I wanted to ask you about him because Child of the 50s, Man of the 80s was a really, really it affected me in a big way. But in that show, I guess he was just born because you were talking about being an older parent, and this is where it's pretty humorous to me because you were 42 or 41 when you
41 when he was born.
when you did the special though, and several
Mhm.
times in there, you talk about being old, and I'm wondering, do you still feel like 41, 42 is old?
No, but I always, you could call it organic, a little tired expression, but I only wrote about how I felt,
Right.
about how things were developing. When I got married, I wrote about that. When I wife was pregnant, I wrote about that. She was an opera singer, I wrote about that. Um, Actually, he tried stand up. My son, he worked for Bobby Kennedy for 8 years in the Riverkeeper, uh, nonprofit. Bobby Kennedy is now a disgrace. I'm ashamed of him. He's a personal friend to this anti-vaxxing shit and all that. Anyway, that's another story.
That's a
My son
very
decided to try stand up. Never told me, never tried asked me to help him or anything like that. It was a question of material with him. He has tremendous stage presence, but he's a chef.
oh
He's a
boy.
chef and got a great job. It's a restaurant in Brooklyn called Feta Sao. It's barbecue.
Wow, very
And
cool. Good
pretty
for
well
him.
known. And he worked himself up to chef after 2 or 3 years.
Um,
I always wrote about what was current with me, and I made a big move to talk politics during the Watergate scandal on my second album, Mind Over Matter. And because I did the first HBO special ever, and I did 9 of them, when I did politics, it had to be stuff that would last. I'm not like that guy, John, what's his name, who's brilliant, that Englishman on HBO.
John Stewart? No, no.
No, John Stewart has his own wonderful qualities. The guy, that Englishman that talks politics, he covers the previous week.
Oh,
I,
John. Yeah. Now, John
Oliver,
Oliver.
Oliver,
Oliver.
Oliver.
Yeah.
I'm the
Yeah.
old one that's 81 here, and I'm remembering the names. Get with it.
Believe me, this is a fear I'm living with because it only started 2 years ago, where the short-term memory is clearly leaving.
Yeah, everybody has it. Why did I come into the kitchen?
Yeah.
When you think you're Abraham Lincoln, that's when you start worrying.
I think I'm Groucho Marx.
No, I've seen it. I had a guy I went to college with presented at 52 with dementia, and he lasted about 6, 7 years. He came to see me at the 92nd Street Y. He barely knew who I was. He was an ophthalmic surgeon, an eye surgeon. Yeah, that's bad news. I have a friend who's has it in his family, and it worries him. Although he's sharp as a tack. It's Betty Davis said, "Old age is not for sissies." She didn't help it with smoking 3 packs a day and tons of martinis. So there she was, semi-stroked on Cavett, talking to him. I always thought she was a little overrated too, overacted, but she was a movie star. Um, the thing is that I don't know the 70s from the 80s, from the 90s, from the 2000s. It's one continuum. I have a very good memory for certain things. I wrote one book, and it's a memoir, but it ends when I'm 25 years old. And those stories I told in that memoir, I remembered like they were yesterday. But in other events, people will tell me funny things I did or said 30 years ago. Yeah, but I didn't remember. All I can say is it's been something the Chinese wish on you, an interesting life.
Yeah.
I could not have, I always stuck to my own guns. I didn't go with trends. I stayed what I am. And if I did work shows, for example, 6,000 people at Six Flags over Georgia in the middle of the day, sponsored by Coca-Cola, with off-duty cops with their 4-year-olds on their lap. And I had to do a show.
Wow.
So, but I wanted to make them laugh. So I didn't do anything that would, when I worked at Harvard, I could do a different show, not necessarily a different point of view. But my job is I've been hired to make them laugh, not to offend them. And I like making people think. I think that part of my trademark. On the other hand, I love nonsense. I love physical comedy. I still climb on the piano when I feel like it.
You had a very wide range, but what strikes me, I don't know how much you follow the state of stand-up comedy right now,
Not
and where
much. No.
specials, because you mentioned you were the very first HBO special, and in those days, a special was meant something. It was HBO's typical programming was movies that had just gotten out of theaters and now they're
Right.
running.
That's how it started.
And you were something different than that, and it was special. But also, you made it special in that you put a lot of work into it. You crafted a theme for the show, did an intro, the basic part, and then the song parts at the end. And what we're seeing today is people calling it special when it's really just doing their act that they do at a comedy club with cameras, and it's
Well,
not
that,
really
that's
thought
all
out.
right. I always like production values. For example, what's her name? The chubby comedian from. She had a sitcom and she made racist remarks. I think she lived in Boston.
Roseanne.
Yeah, Roseanne. Roseanne Barr did a special for HBO a number of years ago, and the people at HBO I became pretty friendly with over the years. Well, they lost half their pensions when they absorbed AOL, or AOL absorbed them. In any case, the first two I think they owned and produced, but from then on they give me money and I have to give them a show, the way NBC did for my two special deal in the early '80s. No, but you got to give them a show that looks nice, you know.
Right.
She went to a club in Boston and did the show and kept the money. We would get Broadway designers and good lighting people and all that. And we were, you know, kind of searching our way at the beginning. It was a man named Harlan Kleiman who died a few years ago. He became an investment banker on the West Coast, Northern California. He came to see me when I performed in San Francisco. He started it. He was programming HBO, which had a couple of dozen employees and was part of Time Life. And they didn't have their own building or anything like that. And he thought they want to do live programming because all these movies cost them a lot of money to rent. And they had no original material. He said, wouldn't it be great if you could take a young guy like Klein, who does all these college concerts, and film him tape him at a college concert where you can say what, I mean, I don't work particularly profanely. In fact, I object to that, but we're adults. I made sure people knew that in the first shows in some stupid way, you know. And they sent an art director out to 4 or 5 colleges I was booked at. And they loved Bryn Mawr and Haverford College. Bryn Mawr and Haverford, the girls and the boys' school, beautiful, wonderful schools, were presenting Robert Klein. And they loved the auditorium in Haverford, you know, wood, an old thing with busts of old geezers, you know. And so that's how HBO was born. We said, you know what, let's do something backstage before I come on. That started that. So those were pioneering days. I mean, Michael Fuchs took over and really made HBO something incredible.
Right.
This was so early that 30 years ago, we used to go on these fabulous junkets. They would have a Super Bowl thing every year, private jet to Hawaii. They'd fly all the cable owners out, airfare and everything. Not everyone went on the private jet. It would crash. It was small. And he would send me out fishing with this guy who owned so-and-so cable in the Southeast. Come on, get HBO. Come on, pick up HBO. You know, that's how early it was.
Wow.
I was a kind of an advisor on the original. It was called Comedy Central, right?
Right.
And I even had a show called what's the movie that Robin did? Dead Poet Society. It was Dead Comic Society.
Wow.
Excellent prints of Chaplin, Laurel and Hardy, trying to introduce it to a new audience, and it didn't really happen. But I was really in at the beginning of cable. I was the first original programming for pay television, as far as I know.
Right. Yeah, I think that's true. And that's
Saturday Night Live. I did the 5th show in the first year, and I did the 3rd year, and I would have done more. I was always doing a movie or something else, I actually told Lorne Michaels, don't do this live, because they were so nervous. They were so nervous. The technical people in that NBC at 30 Rock had not done a live show since Howdy Doody in 1954. They were terrified.
Right.
And yeah, I was certainly wrong. Anyway, it's lasted forever.
I love live, and obviously this is not it's not something that needs to be rehearsed or any of that kind of stuff. It's just two guys talking or two people talking. But people say, well, because everybody who does what I do, they're basically taping and editing and all that stuff. There's something magical about knowing that it's now. So, uh,
Yeah, but I mean, you can imitate now. For example, I'm addicted to watching New York sports on television. I don't even like going anymore, honest to God. I mean, my father took me to Yankee Stadium when I was 5. I lived 2 miles from Yankee Stadium. My mother used to give me $1.25 general admission,
oh
50
no, it
cents,
had to be less than that. It had to be. It was a dollar
$1.25.
25, $1.25 when I was 13, 14 years old. Maybe
Um,
it stayed that way
or
forever.
maybe I had better seats, but they
Yeah.
were third deck,
General admission, right?
third
Yeah.
deck. Not bleachers was 60 cents or 75
Oh,
cents.
yeah.
50 cents for 2 hot dogs, 25 cents for a soda, 10 cents for a scorecard. I don't even care about going anymore. But I can't watch the game. Thank God for DVR. I shouldn't say thank God, because I'm sort of an agnostic. I'm on the cusp. Um, I fast forward the commercials. I do that with football. I do it with basketball. I can even fast forward pitching changes or fast forward a shitty team that can't hit and go to the next inning. So nowness is not always the most. My son cannot watch, and people I know, my nephew is a fanatic Giants fan, has to watch it live. Won't
Right.
even tape it to see afterwards. Because he's got his phone, he knows what's going on. Yeah, spontaneity and the mistakes that go with it is worthwhile. It's just that no one was used to that. And of course, at Second City, well, improvisation was our specialty, and those were fabulous days. And this documentary about me, did you see it?
No.
Yeah, Robert Klein still can't stop his leg. Unfortunately, it was produced by Harvey Weinstein, and it's all in litigation. It was on Stars for a while, and it's really good. All these big names in comedy.
They can't get rid of all the content that Harvey Weinstein had some hands on, because
No,
then they'd be
no, it's not that it's forbidden anywhere because it was his company. It's that who owns it and who dictates where it's shown. It was directed by a guy who was chairman of the New York Film Critics Circle for many years. In fact, I presented him with a Lifetime Achievement Award last year, Marshall Fine. And, Stewart and Seinfeld and Leno and all of them say how I influenced them. Because as Leno put it, when you're a kid in Western Massachusetts, you want to go into comedy. Your mother has to, deal with, is he still into that? The worry about it.
Yeah.
And he said you could point to Robert Klein. He went to college. He was normal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Bill Maher said he copied routines from Child of the 50s. He wanted to see them on paper. So everybody had their thing going. All these guys are about 7, 8 years younger, and they represent the big go-ahead. Pryor and I became friends at the Improv in the fall of '66. He was a gentle, he had a sweet, gentle side, as well as a violent, eruptive side, And
Right.
Carlin, I'm a bit of a hermit. I don't hang out a lot since the old days at the Improv, but George was a very, very decent man, as well as a brilliant comedian. And I keep in touch with his daughter and a little bit less with Rain Pryor. I'm the uncle who's still alive.
Right. I didn't know about that. I'm gonna because Kelly Collin is in like some of the circles that I travel in and stuff.
She's a nice, very nice woman, and I went to see her one woman show, which was pretty good, especially the clips of her father, which were well chosen, and it was tough. I mean, if you read a book, it wasn't easy,
Right.
being brought up like that. But um, I'm just not I wasn't a networker. I also never moved to the West Coast. I had to rent houses there and stay there for a while. I had to rent apartments. I'm not a networker, but I guess I'm satisfied because I'm working tomorrow night in some gated community in Long Island.
Really?
Oh, you want to come?
Yeah. Tomorrow night. Tomorrow.
You might
Yes.
feel really young. Oh,
Yeah.
tomorrow we have to. And if I die tonight,
No, don't. Please
I don't
don't.
know. It's
Gated community on Long Island. Is it in Nassau, Suffolk? You don't have to give it away here since it's probably a private show anyway. But
Farmingdale.
Farmingdale? Really?
Yeah, let me look it up. I better know because I have to get there, right?
Wow. And now, how does that happen? Somebody calls you up and says, I'd like you to do a.
Nah, my agent, Kenny DiCamillo.
I'm obviously an agent, but somebody calls your agent and says, well, 'cause it just doesn't seem like that takes balls to say, I think I can get like Robert Klein.
This is a little chippy. It's below the regular money, but well worth going out for.
Right.
I didn't work for 2.5 years. See, that's another thing too. I made a lot of money. I knew nothing about money. I know nothing about money. I didn't go into producers. I did have to do executive producer functions with respect to talent on my specials. I used some talent on the HBO and in my pilots. I used people as much. I used Madeline Kahn and Peter Boyle as much as I could because they were my best friends in show business from the earliest time. But I'm not a money guy. But here's the point I wanted to make. I had, fortunately, 3 accountants my whole career. And they're honest.
Yeah.
I mean, Jane Alexander, I was on Broadway with her and Sisters Rosenzweig. I used to kiss her 8 performances a week. She immediately went into government. She became the head of the National Endowment for the Arts. Pardon me while I belch.
That's fine.
Cucumbers are incredible, aren't they? You have it in the morning. They're good for you, low calorie, and you enjoy it for the rest of the day. So no one stole from me. Pacino. Went to see him backstage in the Merchant of Venice. Oh, man, can you believe it? I stole multiple money from him. I was in a movie with him that was a real good one, but very few people saw it. It's called People I Know. So I have money. I don't have to work.
Right.
But I don't know. I wasn't sure I wanted to. The cliche when you retire, you can read. People say, I want to catch up on traveling or I want to read. I had it up to here with traveling, okay?
Yeah.
I haven't purchased a bar of soap in 35 years or a coat hanger. I haven't had any of that.
Yeah.
But I've been reading in the last 4 years, and I've always been a reader, but more than ever, mostly, well, a lot of fiction too, but World War II has always been of interest. I was a history major in college. I learned nothing. What I learned was so superficial. It was almost equivalent to George Washington chopping down the cherry tree, which we were taught in PS 94. It was nonsense.
What you say it's baffling to me. I wanted to ask you what you're doing because you have a show tomorrow night. What you do now? Well, if you're doing as much music as you did, incorporating that. But now I have to ask, how do you go from being a history major to Yale Drama School? I mean, don't you have to have a drama background to get into Yale Performing Arts?
Briefly, I went to Alfred University. I wanted to be a doctor. A few things got in my way: calculus, physics, biology, zoology, reading, spelling, comprehension, behavior, attitude, and attendance. It's a joke, but it's the truth. It was incredibly hard. It was a feeder for medical schools. Most of the people I went to school with are doctors and a few lawyers. I found out it wasn't for me. I changed history, political science, loved it. My father was always interested in history. He sold textiles in the Common Center. He didn't graduate from college. He left college. So my sophomore year, I saw a sign for, they were casting for the play, Brothers Karamazov. I went out for it. I got the lead. There was two men in the drama department at Alfred University, Smith and Brown, two tweedy,
Yeah.
guys, pipes. All right. So after my junior, I was in every play, and I was good. I was very good. And I always was talented. I always made jokes. I always could sing. I always, I was in camp. I was in plays. But they cornered my father at the end of my junior year. Mr. Klein, we think he's very talented. He should go to the Yale Drama School. And my father said, Yale? To be an actor? Did Eddie Cantor go to Yale? He had a point. Who goes for a doctorate at Yale? It's 3 years for a doctorate, a PhD. So Smith had gone to Amherst College with the dean of Yale Drama School. And he had only sent, in 35 years, he had only sent recommended two people, a lighting designer and a director. They're both great. He recommended me as an actor, no audition, no nothing. There I am at Yale.
Wow.
And I stayed 1 year. Jimmy Burrows, the biggest director in Hollywood, television director, was my best friend. And I left after 1 year. He stayed the 3 years for Master of Fine Arts. So in the second year there, he calls me up. I have no job. President Kennedy was assassinated. I was at low ebb. First time in my life I'm out of school, 20 years old. I went to college when I was 16, which I don't recommend. So I was just 21. And he said, listen, I'm doing a review on weekends in New Haven. Come on up, $35. I'll lend you my tux. I had no tux. Two guys, two girls, Mayor Lindsay, whatever. So Jimmy's father was a big Broadway director and writer, Abe Burrows. He did How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. He did Guys and Dolls, wrote the book. So he wanted a William Morris agent. He was with William Morris for 37 years to come up and see his son's work. And the agent saw it, liked it. He corners me, says, Second City's coming to town. They need actors. They don't need to come to New York for actors anymore. It's like a feeder for Saturday Live and everything else. It's an empire. And, 20 actors in the William Morris conference room. And they made us do improvs. And Fred Willard and I never met each other. We both got the job.
Wow.
So that was the greatest. We were like, in that documentary, David Steinberg says, we were like rock stars in Chicago. We were. It was still new, Second City. And Gilda and that crowd followed me by about 3 or 4 years. I followed Alan Arkin, and I did a Zoom play with him last year. He's 90 years old. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
So great.
Yeah.
He's really great. He never gave a bad performance. So that was it. You have to have some luck. It came to New York. The Second City didn't do too well. I got my Broadway show. And I got a potato chip commercial, an animation. I was the father's voice. Ruffles have ridges. The baby's going, Ruff. Look, honey, he's talking. And, I made $18,000 in 3 years.
Wow.
So there I was. So from the time of 23 years old, when I went to Chicago, my father gave me $620. And I had a 1960 Ford Galaxy. I drove to Chicago. And I used to save my money. My father used to say, salt it away for a rainy day, So I got $150 a week. I used to put about $70 a week in the bank. and I came home with a little nut of $1,100, and I had to be told, have people help me handle it, and and all the rest. So that is important because people have made 1,000 times more money than I have and wind up broke.
Right. Well,
So
that's the opposite of the challenge that so many comedians face today is they not getting paid. And somebody who is a modern, very successful comedian who said, she made a joke the other night on Twitter that my friends really want me to make it so I can get off their couch. And I was like, if you're not making it, and she said, it's not about fame, it's about money and being compensated fairly. And comedians, don't have any money to sock away. It's not about getting paid enough to lose it or worry about that. So I'm glad to
well,
hear that it wasn't that way.
yeah, I mean, there was no way because I had no money when I was a kid. My father and mother had no money. I wound up giving them a check every month. They wound up sitting at the White House while I performed and coming to Broadway openings, all those exciting things, which is wonderful because, they've gone a long time ago. So, if I didn't make it bigger, Rodney used to chide me a lot. I'll tell you, how come you haven't hit bigger? He went right to the core of things.
Yeah.
Like when my father died, I'm laughing, but my father was sick for a long time. He had what do you call it? Hepatitis. No one knew why. He didn't drink, didn't eat shell food, whatever. And it became cirrhosis and then liver cancer. It was predicted. And so my father died. So I told Rodney, and it was the time I was hanging around with him, he said, what was the exact cause of death? He doesn't say, I'm sorry. What was the exact cause of death? My Rodney is getting less and less good, but I'll still do it. So I said, well, he had hepatitis. No, of course. He doesn't want to know anything about the history of the cause. I said, well, he had hepatitis. Then, no, the cause. Get to the cause. He wanted to say, well, how can I live an extra day?
Yeah,
meanwhile, he abused his body but wanted to live forever. It was like that fear of death and inviting it. He used to say, I'll tell you, there's times you wake up in the morning and it's a gift.
Yeah.
And I saw him in many of those conditions. So it was, self-centered. Go ahead, say something.
Well, I was just,
That. Oh,
this whole idea of making it, because today comedians work for nothing, and I understand the if you can from the club owner's perspective and theater owner's perspective, if you can get slave labor, you're going to take it. But it's a struggle for the art of comedy. And I think you alluded to this, maybe you didn't, maybe I'm just imagining this, but I think somewhere you talked about laughter being the best medicine. I think culturally we've stopped valuing the art form of comedy, and that's what led to just the idea.
Why do you think that?
Well, because then we're not paying comics at all. Nobody can make a dime, even people.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with people's appreciation for a good laugh.
No, I don't. I mean,
it's a buyer's market,
right? But don't we put emphasis on the things we value? In other words, we value a guy who can throw a football and well, to the point of paying $150 million a year or whatever the hell they make. But comedians can't make a buck. I mean, I literally can't make a buck. Sometimes it's like, thank you very much. We know people.
Well, there's two things here. Several things, but one is that comedy is a high calling. I know it sounds a little pretentious, but I don't mean it to be. I said this many times. I said it to the New York Times years ago. It's a high calling. There is anecdotal evidence that it may help people get well from a disease, but that's not really the point. Everyone needs a good laugh. In the worst of times, in slavery, they had humor is what kept people going, even in concentration camps. Bad fortune, impoverishment, It's why the Irish and the Jews sort of have something in common. Having visited Ireland a couple of times, I was so surprised pleasantly to find out what it was. It wasn't like some kid I knew, O'Flaherty in the Bronx.
Yeah.
Funny, wonderful, literate. I mean, generalizing, but of course. So it's a very high calling. So I agree. It's unfortunate that some comedians aren't paid well, but you know, it could be said of many. We pay teachers nothing. You know, and
This, you
and
know what?
Lenny Bruce, what he said in the early '60s, late '50s, still going. We pay a faro dealer in Vegas more than a teacher. So it may be partly a buyer's market. I do remember that when I went to the Improv, it was the only club of its kind. And Bud, who died last year, by the way, Bud Friedman, who owned the Improv, and his ex-wife Silver died within weeks of each other. And in their obituaries in the New York Times, each time there was a picture with me in it, and people thought I was dead when they opened the page. Bud Friedman, you know, after my days there, because I spent probably 3 years hanging around and working on it, but maybe even less, because when I started to work, I worked so much I could write new material on the job. I always wrote by improvising first, recording it, you know. I didn't sit down. George would try things out, but he'd write like a playwright.
Right.
Word 1, word 1,000. The stage manager knew when he was over. They never knew when I was over because I wouldn't do it quite the same way. But in any case, when I began to develop material and everything, I didn't have to go back. But from what I understand, he had a monopoly and he wasn't always very kind to people. He was very kind to Bette Midler. I was there first. Well, Rodney was there before me. Rodney, me, and Bette Midler. No check, anytime welcome. And Bud and Silver Friedman mothered Bette. She was a Jewish girl from Hawaii in New York. You know, she used to come. She was in the Fiddler on the Roof. She used to come in a costume, looked like she wore from the show. You know.
Yeah.
But anyway, Bud Friedman apparently began to, you know, be not nice to. I don't know how to put it, but the comedians. He'd give, you know, make them wait for hours and all that. And so Rick Newman opened up. And they went there because Rick was I loved Bud. I owed him a lot, you know, because of his faith in me. And he was quite a character. He was wounded in Korea. He was in combat. You should see the scar in his leg. You'd never know it from this little guy. He was a tough guy.
Wow.
And Rick Newman was a pure pussycat. Welcomed all these comedians, so there was now competition. And you know, I never paid too much attention. I never read Backstage and Variety and all that. I left it to agents and managers and all that. But I found out that there was this explosion of comedy clubs. I bumped into Paula Poundstone in San Francisco. Hey, I worked for so-and-so, the so-and-so. I never heard of these places.
Right.
And then what happened? There were too many of them. And so there was a Darwinian, in every sense of the word, contraction of the number of clubs. So I'm asking you, is it possible there are too many comedians for the slots?
It's absolutely.
And also,
absolute
how good are they? How good are they? And
not that good. You're absolutely right about the quantity is insane. Everybody who has a phone now considers themselves a comedian. They're doing TikTok videos and calling themselves comedians.
yeah,
and no real respect for the art or studying the craft of those who came before them, or how it's really, you know, how it works and all that kind of stuff. There are a handful of really great ones. And then from there on, there are million, you know, there are probably 10 million comedians in America. Right?
Well, that's true. When I started, there was no such thing as a comedian as a profession. You know, and comedians were guys with cufflinks and they made quick jokes. There were guys who broke the mold, obviously. Newhart and, well, Lenny Bruce. My most admiration when I wanted to be a comedian was for Lenny Bruce and Jonathan Winters. Both completely different.
Completely different.
But Well, in one sense, no, because they're both very hip in my sense of the word. And both of them were theatrical. They made sounds, they acted out a whole movie, but one was a social commentator and pushed the envelope and didn't work. I mean, his lawyer, what's his name? I saw him not even too long ago. He was his only champion. Nobody would hire Lenny Bruce. He's going to say something dirty or about the Pope, they'll arrest him. Jonathan is apolitical, but he is an incredible improvisational mind.
Right.
And he's a show in himself, and that's what I like to be. I'm not as gifted as Jonathan, but I like to be a show in myself. A little music and talking. I patrol the stage. I don't stand at a mic or anything like that. But now it's not only a profession, it's a well-known profession. Anyone knows the name stand-up. It's automatic. What you know. So I've noticed, I mean, I thought Chris Rock, when I don't tend to look at a lot of other people.
Yeah.
A lot of them might be too good. I don't want to have to feel competitive. I saw and heard stuff of Chris Rock's that was really good. And years ago, I met David Chappelle, right?
Yeah.
At the Rebar. I don't think it's in existence anymore. And he was very respectful. He had seen my stuff, and he was unknown. He's very good. He's very smart. I don't like these point of view. I disagree that comedians can't say anything anymore. Just don't be vicious. Don't be racist. I mean, I'm glad they call out people for that stuff. I really am.
Yeah.
We haven't gone far enough.
Let,
You think.
let me go there for a second with you,
Go ahead.
because again, I keep coming back to the one big special of yours that really it sticks in my mind. In Child of the 50s, a Man of the 80s, a couple of times you talk, and it's surprising to me because it was 1984 or something, and you talk about language. In other words, you can't say father, you have to say or you can't say husband, you have to say father of the child. Like, you have to be politically correct. And it seemed to me that you were a little, I don't know, annoyed by having to remember what you can say in 1984, and where it is now compared to then is far more.
When I did the Tonight Show, okay, Robert, what do you got? They were very nervous about what you had to say. And when I did a summer replacement show, networks used to replace big stars for the summer, give a tryout, 8 shows, So I replaced Glenn Campbell in 1970. Comedy Tonight, I did 8 shows. We shot them here in New York. Madeline Kahn, Peter Boyle, great writers. And they warned me, no Vietnam stuff. You see what happened to the Smothers Brothers, so you don't want to get fired.
Right.
So we had to snake around, all my career. You couldn't say anything. That's why the HBO was such a blast out. Now it's every second word.
Right.
Elegance is out the window. And
Yeah.
not only that, I find it in people's everyday language that an excessive amount of profanity, it's kind of lazy.
It loses its power completely,
English is
too.
a fantastic language.
Yeah.
My ex-wife will tell you it's difficult to sing for an opera singer, more difficult than Italian, which seems to just flow out. But it's a beautiful, expressive language, and nobody uses it very much. They're afraid to use words. I have a bit where McHugh, fellatio. I do a thing about that Idaho Congressman Larry, what was his name? Larry. I'm starting to fuck up with names in it. Larry, he had to leave Congress, Senate. He was caught in the Minneapolis men's, remember?
Yeah.
Larry Craig, Senator Craig. So I said, it's a thing I tell you in my entire life. I have never, sex to me is a place for privacy and intimacy. This guy wants to have sex in one place I want to get out of as quickly as possible, an airport men's room. Try to take a leak in LaGuardia, you need galoshes,
Yeah.
with a guy rubbing a sponge around the toilet for taking an hour. You know, I've never walked into an airport men's room my whole life and said, a fella could settle down here. Plenty of lighting, plenty to read, lots of toilet paper, good churches and schools nearby. Honey, you register the children in school. I'll be performing a fellatio on a deputy sheriff here in booth 1. So I said, you see that fellatio? You're a smart audience. You know what that is. Could I do that in stupid America? They go around and use a word like fellatio. They probably think it's a character from Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet fellatio is dead. So, I regretted when I couldn't work always my smartest. I never said things I shouldn't say or points of view. I did 2 shows this summer, 1 show this winter in the Villages, the most famous right-wing retirement community in Florida. Tremendous hit. I even got in some sort of politics without Trump is not even funny anymore. What are you going to do?
Well, you were always able to bring, and it sounds like just blowing smoke here, but it's true. You were always able to bring people together with political. My parents were conservative as can be, and when you were joking about Nixon, I was by that time politically astute as a teenager and totally anti-Nixon. You were telling jokes about that, and my parents and I could laugh at the humor you presented, even though it was kind of against their politics.
Well, I try to be reasonable. In other words, not offensive. I really admired Joan Rivers. I knew her for close to 50 years. I don't know, 40 years, 40, 50 years. But I was appalled at her imitating Dick Clark and Kirk Douglas, people with strokes. It's so cruel. When she was cruel to Elizabeth Taylor for no reason. Yes, the woman married 8 times. I was once at a dinner where I was asked to say a few words. I didn't know Elizabeth Taylor. And we were introduced before the show. She said, "Oh, please be kind." I said, "Are you kidding me? You're a wonderful actor." And and there was she does a thing about deafness, and the guy in the audience has a deaf child. He wasn't even offensive. He just mentioned, and she said, "Oh, grow up." I don't like gratuitous cruelty.
Right.
I don't like cruelty. I like hitting hard, but I don't like cruelty. And I also don't want to upset people unnecessarily. I'm there to get laughs on my own terms and intelligent terms, Yeah. But and making people laugh, it just, for the I remember seeing these comedians in the Borscht Belt. By the way, they're starting a Borscht Belt museum, which is really interesting.
Wow.
It's going to be in Ellenville, New York. Now, I only played it, if you'll pardon the expression, when I was a star, and they got the big money with the limousine and all that. I never played the tiny places. I was a lifeguard and I was a camp counselor in these small hotels. But I remember seeing, my father had a good year, and we spent 2 weeks in a shitty little hotel in Woodburn, New York, and I saw live comedy. This Jewish comedian, and the audience was 98% Jewish, and he did a lot of, I had an old bit about it, English jokes with Yiddish punchlines, You know what happened last night? I went to my wife. I said, "Let's make love." She went, hubba, 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 So I realized something, that for the 40 minutes, 35 minutes, this guy did. He shows up in his Cadillac, and he gets on the stage, that those people forgot their troubles, their disappointment in their marriage or their children or whatever. It is a wonderful calling, and it's priceless, in good times or bad times. And I worried a little, the pandemic. First of all, I was getting I love doing nothing. And another thing, I wanted to make a point. It may be too late for some. I did not come from a physical family with, but my ex-wife, I got to admit, was a person that did physical exercise and all that. And she kind of turned me on to it. I have been working with a trainer for 35 years.
In what
Come,
kind, like aerobics,
personal trainer.
yoga?
No,
Oh,
weightlifting,
wow.
treadmill. I have a gym downstairs, modest. I have a professional treadmill. I have machines and free weights, and that has made a tremendous difference. I see people I went to school with, or my uh, people of my age, and I mean, I'm not in the kind of shape I was. And the COPD, the coughing can be annoying, the chronic bronchitis. But man, I walk my ass off. I can lift weights, and I have body tone. I have and that has helped a lot too. But I thought during the pandemic, do I need to do this? Do I want to do it again? And can I do it? Because the only times I took off from stand up was when I was in theater. Broadway, even on Broadway, I schedule occasional Sunday nights, and even if I chartered a plane once or twice to go and do a good lucrative date somewhere on my off night, but I hadn't done it at all for 2.5 years. No, like riding a bicycle, well, I wouldn't ride a bicycle either. No, I want one, but it was like I never left. I was a little rusty on some of the bits. Improvisation started again, new stuff. I mean, I'm not interested in a whole new repertoire. I really would like to write another book, but it just came back. So it tickles me that I can go out, not as frequently as I used to, but since January, I would say I did 2 tours in Florida,
Right.
Theaters and communities, and a number of dates up here, but Monmouth College, Sacred Heart, a few others. Love it.
Yeah.
And I can still do it and feel good about it. So I suppose it's anti-death. I have a granddaughter now. It's 3 months old. I'll never, if I want to see her graduate from college, I'll have to freeze myself cryogenically and defrost myself, or have me defrosted maybe 2 weeks before the graduation.
I think maybe you have to make like 19 more years, right? Or some. I don't know.
Highly doubtful. My brother-in-law lived to be 95. He had all his smarts. His body gave out. There are people whose smarts give out. Very few people, can really. I'm seeing a lot of people I knew go. In a weird way, it isn't depressing. I can't say why. It's. I'm trying to talk it into myself that it's part of life. I don't. It's kind of a maudlin thought, but on the other hand, it's not maudlin. It's something. When they tell me that I got 6 months, I'm going to probably start worrying. But it's hard. It's everyone says the same things. None of us can really believe it in that sense, because my college, an incredible episode in college at the fraternity. We had an Animal House kind of thing. And all these guys were a little brighter than the Animal House guys, but they were wild. The things they did, we were let loose for the first times in our lives. We lived in a house without any supervision. And it's like yesterday. I mean,
Yeah.
I can remember what these guys look like. When I see them, they're old and they're gray and they're wrinkled. And they kind of look like they did, but like I expect them to. This stuff has been written about forever and talked about, because it's the way it is. If you're fortunate enough to live this long, I mean, these stupid anti-vax. I mean, a vaccine will affect someone, dangerously in 1 in 1.5 million. Anything. My father was allergic to aspirin. He was told never to take aspirin. He could die.
Right.
Everyone takes aspirin. Yeah, my father would die from it. Why do you
Right.
think we're alive? Why do you think the New York Times, in the obituaries every day, which I read, I check out, 80s, 80s, 90s, 90s, 70s was an eye opener because of things like vaccines.
Yeah,
Because
my
people who
my
know.
biggest concern is after this, it's not even that one. It's the fact that we don't want to create a generation of people that are anti-science, anti-medicine, prolonging human life because of some crazy cult people who just got scared over one thing, and that becomes a trend now going. What if people had that about polio? We wouldn't be here, most of us.
Smallpox. I remember lining up in 1946. Little boy. I still have the vaccination mark somewhere. Look, I live near Trump's golf course up here at Bradcliffe Manor. Most days I have to pass this thing. I see someone on that course. I feel like saying, do you not realize that this guy